You were telling me, Paul, that you have actually been trying to develop agritourism on Wilridge for a while.
Oh, yeah, it's been one of our big goals. And thanks for having me back.
Of course.
Yeah, I quit my day job and looked at every winemaker's dream is to have their own vineyard and total creative control of the whole process, the grapes that are grown, what grapes, how they're grown,
Right.
and really be tied to a piece of land. The European tradition of a winery. Where they don't even have the word winemaker in French or Italian.
Oh, really?
Right, you're a wine grower.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
you're a farmer. The winemaking is the easy part. The growing the grapes is the important part. And so in 2007, we found an old abandoned apple orchard out on Natchez Heights near Yakima, and a perfect location for grapes, for wine grapes. And so we started the process, and it became really apparent early on that just having a farm wasn't going to cut it.
You're talking about like financially trying to survive.
Yeah, exactly, especially a small farm.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we're up to about 12 acres of grapes and 4 acres of apples and pears that we inherited, the apples and pears. And that's just not economically viable unless you have some kind of diversification.
Right.
And then, so we have the value-added product of the wine and the brandy that we do at our distillery.
Yeah.
And that's you've got to be able to sell that. And if you sell it through your normal channels, there's so many middlemen that you end up getting, nothing for the product.
Yeah.
And it's even worse for apples or pears or other tree fruit where the middlemen totally control it to the point where you don't even set your own price. What you do is you get a phone call. You give them your apples, for instance.
Right.
Then you get a phone call maybe or an email 6, 8, 14 months later that says, oh, here's the price we got for your fruit. And some years they say, and it was less than the cost of packing the fruit, so please write us a check for the cost of packing your fruit.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, that's the situation this year.
So is this, so when these real retail establishments say that they buy locally from small farmers, I always think that means they're buying from the small farmers, but is that not true?
Well, they don't usually say small, they usually say family.
Okay, right.
And so there's some big farms owned by families.
Oh, I see.
They've been doing this for a long time. It's just, it's really hard to, make it with less than, say, 1,000 acres. And really you need more than that. And you need your own processing plants. And it's just there's such economies of scale, both in agriculture and really in the wine business.
Right.
Gallo or Chateau Saint Michel sells wine for half my cost of production. So you're definitely got to sell an artisan product,
right?
And yeah, so there's a lot of greenwashing out there. There's a lot of family farm that's not really a family farm, but that's the problem. You've got to be able to get those direct lines to the consumer. So the farmers markets are really important.
Okay.
And being able to sell at your farm.
Right.
And then to get people to the farm. Now, some people are lucky enough that their farm is, on the interstate.
Right.
They can put up a billboard, come pick my pumpkins.
Yeah.
But if you're like us and you're, on the end of a dirt road, you've got to attract people up. And now we have great recreational opportunities. We've got incredible views of Natchez Heights, Cowiche Canyon, Mount Adams, that sort of thing.
Right.
And people can stroll the grounds. They can go for a hike. Yeah. But we didn't really start getting people up there until one of my managers started scheduling local bands to come play, and that's when people discovered us.
Yeah.
And I was at another small farm on Orcas Island. And I asked the manager there, or the owners there. I was having dinner, and I said, how did you guys make this successful? And I said, well, it was music. Once we started getting music up here all summer, then we got people coming in and buying and eating at our restaurant.
Yeah.
Now, and they're allowed to have a restaurant, which is very difficult if you're in the agricultural zone like we are in Yakima.
Now, can you talk a little more about this? Because I couldn't really understand a lot of the the regulations that was being discussed at we were looking at the meetings at Yakima County.
Oh,
and
yeah. So Yakima County right now has got a program to promote agritourism.
mm-hmm.
The county commissioners are saying that they really want to become an agritourism destination.
Right.
And I think they look at all those cars driving to Walla Walla, from Seattle to Walla Walla, and not stopping in Yakima.
Well, I'm surprised because I think, we talked about this, how the soil in Yakima is really sort of the magic soil of Washington State.
Well, Yakima is the fruit basket of the state and the nation.
Interesting.
And it's, there's lots of other great agriculture in
Right.
Washington, but when it comes to, for instance, wine grapes, they still produce most of the wine grapes. It's the oldest viticultural area, and all those Walla Walla wineries, the original ones, all made their reputations on Yakima Valley fruit, and they still buy lots of Yakima Valley fruit. And now there are vineyards in Walla Walla. Most of them are actually in Oregon, or a lot of them are in Oregon, on the Oregon side of the border. But, they are growing grapes there. But still, Yakima is the place with just, fantastic conditions for any kind of tree fruit or berry.
Yeah, that's certainly just the casual information that I've
Yeah,
found.
and then Yakima being, an hour and a half closer to Seattle than Walla Walla, it really is the gateway to the Yakima Valley. It literally is. And Yakima just completely missed the boat on that opportunity.
I know. It's like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Anyone can actually make that trek. Walla Walla, I'm never going to drive that 4 hours.
Well, Walla Walla is a great town. You should definitely do
No.
it, but you got to spend the weekend to make it worth it.
Exactly. I think I'll be flying out there.
Yeah. Well,
But
so what I found is when the reason that the wineries are in Walla Walla instead of Yakima is that Yakima didn't really want them back in the early days. We're talking the 90s, 2000s. In fact, Yakima didn't have a county code that approved wineries until 2006. So I bought my property in 2007. And so then there was an old farmhouse, this 100-year-old farmhouse on the property. I thought, we'll turn this into a tasting room.
Yeah.
That was not specifically allowed by the Yakima County Code until 2006, when some of the existing wineries that had kind of bootlegged their way in, they'd gotten building permits, and they'd put up a stand, and then they'd expanded, and they'd realized they got to have some picnic tables, and they've got to have some toys for the kids, and they got to at least play the radio, if not have a guitarist up on the weekends.
Right.
So they started to get a little more developed, and then they started having problems with the county. And so they came in and said, "Look, we got to change the code." So they got it changed to allow wineries as a agricultural tourist operation, as an operation that's allowed in the ag zone, and this is high value. This is the highest level of agricultural land,
Right.
for preservation in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
And so you were allowed to have a winery, a brewery, or a distillery as part of that. And so that's where we got allowed. But it never said you could have events, or a stage or anything like that. So we never have. We've never had that development. Other folks have, and then they have to go through a higher level of permitting all the way to what they call a destination or resort agricultural tourist operation under the Yakima Code, which involves tens of thousands of dollars. It involves going to a hearing examiner, in some cases having a vote of the county commissioners. It's just not something everybody can do. You've got to be pretty wealthy to be able to do that. So if you're talking about saving small family farms, a lot of them can't do it. And I've never been willing to take the plunge. And I ran a restaurant for a number of years, so I know I don't want to do that again. But really, food and wine are so important together.
Yeah.
It really does make sense. But if you want little farms to be able to survive, unless you define a small farm as 1,000 acres or less, if you're talking about a 100-acre or less farm, they've got to be able to sell their product direct, and they need to have those opportunities like you see in Europe. I think the last time we talked, I mentioned that, I don't have any original ideas. I just look at what they do in Europe and ask, why aren't we doing that in the U.S.?
Yeah.
And in this case, it's It's my brother who lives in the Sierra foothills of California, and they have a nice little wine country there that's not unlike Natchez Heights, and and geography, tucked up against the Sierras instead of the Cascades, and they have apples there. In fact, his little areas, the apple tree area, Apple Hill, and they've got these tiny little apple farms, and believe me, the apples are not better than Washington State apples. In fact, they're not better than Washington State apples. And it's not easier to grow them, but these farms are all successful because every fall they get to have all these people come up and bring out picnic tables and drink apple cider and eat apple pies and sell their entire production.
Yeah.
Which is what they do in Europe with these small farms, where in the fall at harvest time around Oktoberfest,
Right.
you drive up to your favorite local farmer and you buy all your wine for the year or all your brandy for the year, and that's how they can survive on these smaller farms.
I mean, it seems like that's something that can be done immediately. You can just organize these events. You brought up something though, because when I make the trek out there, I'm always looking for somewhere to buy fruit. I mean, the whole idea is to go, I go and visit, but I want to buy apples, or whatever's in season and bring it back. And it's hard for me. I mean, there are stands now. I know there's stands on the
fruit
freeway.
stands. I mean, the fruit stands are that answer. And again, if
Yeah.
your farm happens to be on the interstate,
Yeah.
you're the exception that can make it.
But I always wondered, I know there are other farms out there, and how do you find them? I mean, are they on a map somewhere? Are they listed somewhere? This is,
There's not as many small farms as you might think.
Interesting.
They're getting bought up. It's just not economically viable, like I was saying, for less than about 1,000 acres to make it.
Right.
And even that's tough these days.
Yeah.
There's great directories for organic farms, so you can look those up. Of
Right.
course, there's directories for farmers markets, which is probably your best way.
Yeah.
And then it's the wineries that have really promoted this idea of traveling to see where it's grown.
Yeah.
And really to know, where your wine was created.
Yeah, and there is a cachet to the whole wine culture, which is kind of there's a little bit of glam there to go. It's
Or
it's sort
pretense,
of
depending on your
exactly
perspective.
it's a sort of pastoral dream that you're going to go into, and then you're going to have have a glass of wine at sunset. So
Yeah, we really battle with that because we have to charge a high price for our wine because it costs a lot to make it. But we don't want to be so pretentious. I want my friends to be able to afford my wine. So we try to be a little more relaxed. But we do have, we have this spectacular natural setting.
yeah,
That
Yeah.
really really attracts people.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different kinds of terrain in your property. So
Yeah,
really
well,
go
and that's another
into
difference is that, Kansas, where you just drive your tractor in one direction and a mile later turn it around and go back the other direction. There are areas like that in Washington. Some of the Yakima Valley, you can do that kind of major farming. But up where we are, we've got rock outcrops. So it is more like, say, Germany or the hillsides of Burgundy, where you're
Interesting.
tucking a vineyard here and there, or an apple orchard here and there.
Yeah.
And you've got some land that can't be used for agriculture. So why not put a restaurant there? Why not allow some homes?
Yeah.
So there's other reasons for people to come up and support the area.
So you made the decision that you were interested in developing agritourism on your property, and what happened? What happened in the early stages of that?
Well, I want to make wine, and I want to make the best wine in the world.
Yeah.
And that's our goal, and among the best wines in the world, of course, and to show that we can do that on Natchez Heights. And so if I had my druthers, I would just be in the winery all day. But my managers at the tasting room knew that they got bored of being, open on a Friday night and nobody being there. So they're the ones who started doing more activities.
Got it.
And then that brought complaints from the neighbors.
Oh, I see.
And so that involved, then the county gets involved.
Got it.
And so that's when I was kind of forced to get involved in this process.
Yeah.
And now it's after it's been like over 3 years since this agritourism initiative in Yakima started, and we still don't have a proposal, but it really does look like it's going to be good. that it's going to work. In the
Awesome.
sense that we've got the county commissioners get it. That
Yeah.
you know, if you want to have family farms, you got to let them diversify. You got to let them sell their products,
Yeah.
and you got to let them do some things that attract people up there.
Right.
And the real issue is you got the not in my backyard folks that you have anytime you do any sort of development.
Right.
You have the traditional farmers who are worried that, well, if Paul starts having, rich people from Seattle driving up here, they're going to get mad when they see all the stuff I'm spraying,
I see.
or all the dust I'm making,
Got it.
or the cherry cannons that are blasting off all day long.
Right.
So why would I want to let them up here? Because I've got my farm and I don't need the complication. So that's one side of it. And then you've got the people in these ag zones. Like we're on 40-acre ag. You can only have a residence on 40 acres. That's why the homes are so huge and beautiful, because
Only one for 40 acres?
well, that's in theory,
Right,
and
right.
everybody gets around it.
Yeah.
But that's the idea, as one per 40 acres.
Wow.
Yeah. So then, if you happen to have your little piece of paradise out there,
Yeah.
on the end of a dirt road, maybe you would get a little mad if your neighbor put a vineyard in and a winery next door to you, because it's my piece of paradise. I don't want to share it
Yeah.
with everyone else. And I've always had I've always had a different attitude. I'm one of those people that sits on his front porch at his house, not his back porch. I like to talk to my neighbors. And so, we open up Wilridge. We put a trail down to Cowiche Canyon. We let people come through. We get more joggers in the morning than we get customers in the afternoon sometimes, I think. We have rock climbers climbing, and the people come through on the horses. And to me, that's the wonderful part of life, is to have all your friends over. And if you've got a beautiful place, why not share it?
Yeah.
But other people, they want their privacy. When the trail for Cowiche Canyon came in, when Burlington Northern agreed to turn the railroad line over to the local conservancy,
Yeah.
the guy at the end of the road who had his piece of paradise there at the beginning of Cowiche Canyon, he blew up 3 of the bridges to keep him from putting the trail in.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it's just the same things you see like when a bike path comes in. The existing property owners are all against it. Then eventually they realize their property values went up because the bike path went in.
Okay, but I did want to ask you now. I mean, you have a lot of land. I'm assuming that maybe some of the smaller properties, but you have a lot of land. Isn't it possible to you can move some of your events to a spot where your neighbors can't? Can your neighbors really hear all your activity when you're so? I mean, your house is towards the end.
They can hear it if they try really hard.
I was gonna say, how can they?
But yeah, no, we do work on that.
Yeah.
We work around that, and we do have 85 acres.
You
so
have a lot.
We're pretty separate. Some people are more sensitive to others.
Right. I mean, I understand the in-way traffic because that's kind of it's a very small.
Yeah, if you're used to
access.
having 1 car a day go by your house, and now you have 40 cars a day, it's still not very much. And why do you as opposed to the rest of the public? And so when I look at it as the general public and the citizens of Yakima County, they need to promote ag tourism. They need it for a vibrant local economy. They need it so they have things to do.
Exactly.
That only in the current situation is only a few people get to enjoy the ag zone. And that's not right.
Yeah.
That's where I come down.
Yeah.
Personally on it.
Well, also, I think if people even for me, just discovering Wilridge Winery, when I read that you were looking, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, where am I ever going to get the opportunity to go up and see a farm for in real life and really watch sort of the process of it's that's never going to happen. And where can you do it here? I mean, I don't even know where I could do it here. So I think that I learned a lot about the whole community just from that whole that one little thing I saw on the web. It's I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, what am I getting? But
well, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what a number of other struggling farmers in Washington and Oregon and Idaho are trying to do.
Yeah.
So there's others like us, and we're all inspired by Europe and what we see work there.
Well, and I think the public there's a benefit to the public to go, not only to have interesting events, to go out and travel.
I think if you're looking at the public interest as a whole, there's certainly ways on the side of promoting ag tourism, not eliminating it.
Yes,
which
yes.
currently, a lot of our county codes are set up to make it very difficult. And a lot of these codes are well-meaning in the sense that, their intent is to preserve agricultural land from development.
Right.
Well, these are ag-related uses we're talking about. That's the thing. A winery is ag-related. We're not talking about putting in a school or a church or a nursing home or a Walmart.
Right.
It's got to be ag-related.
Yeah.
And so that's I think you need to have a farm as part of the conditions to it. But then you got to be able to make that farm viable.
Yeah.
And so you got to be able to have some parking.
Yeah.
That's one of the big limitations where we are because it's so rocky.
Yeah.
And there's things in state law that talk about how much land you can convert from agriculture. The irony for us is there's one of the things the state law says that if you do add development in the ag zone, you have to keep it near the existing development. Well, we have all these rock outcroppings. We can't do anything that would be perfect for putting some little tiny houses,
totally.
Or other fun things for people to do, and we can't because they're local. But my neighbors go and put houses on them all the time. So
it doesn't make sense.
What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, they're saying all your development has to be concentrated together.
Yeah, they want it, and again, it's really well-meaning that this idea that preserve as much ag character as you can. There's existing buildings. If you're going to build a new building, put it near that, but it doesn't always work on every site.
Yeah.
There needs to be some site-specific review.
Well, exactly. It seems like first of all, it seems like Yakima counties now see the opportunity that they missed before.
Well, that's what they tell me. It's still not on paper, so we're working and getting it on paper.
Yeah.
And it's been a struggle, but I think we're going to get there, and you're going to really see Yakima take off as the ag tourism destination it always should have been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that again, I think that what's interesting is the farmers markets, of course, are great because you have access, but even then we don't actually know the story behind how the farmers how they bring their food to the consumer.
Well, and there are farmers markets in Washington State that aren't really farmers markets. There's that fight too. There's ones that have standards that say you really have to be a farmer.
Yeah.
And there's other ones that maybe you didn't get that that product you're selling off of your farm.
Oh.
And I go back and forth on that too because the farmers markets need to be viable as well.
Yeah, right.
And so what's really wrong with them having some art that they're selling or maybe some flowers that came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it's certainly good for us because we get into some farmers markets that nobody, other people can't get into.
Right.
We got killed when the state quit allowing brandy to be sold at farmers markets. The big distillers snuck that in on us one year in Olympia, and a dozen craft distilleries.
That's why I've never seen liquor being sold.
It was allowed for a few years, and then we got a log rolled down in Olympia, is what they call it, and we were the quid pro quo. So they said, well, if we're going to do something that makes alcohol more available for the big guys, we got to make it less available some way. So they took away. You wouldn't want to see your kids, or you wouldn't want children to see their parents enjoying a fine Washington State agricultural product in a farmer's market. You'd rather they did it in the back of a pickup truck and in a parking lot, right? No, but seriously, it was really sad because I think about a dozen craft distilleries went out of business because they were doing all their sales at farmers markets, and they had I didn't even find out about this, and I actually testified in favor of the original legislation. Then it was amended on the floor with no notice. I didn't even find out about this until I got the cease and desist letter from the liquor board. And you're not even allowed to sample these products. It's just sell the bottles. Wine, we can at least pour a little taste.
Yeah.
Oregon, you can walk around with a glass of wine and shop at the farmer's market. And of course, you can do that in Europe. And of course, the other vendors love it because people have a good time. They stay longer and they buy more.
Yeah. There's a hospitality factor, that sort of opens up. It's kind of like the idea of like community retail space, right? It's all because of the small restaurants and food, and wine, those venues that bring people there. and bring pedestrians traffic in. And it's the hospitality factor that,
Yeah, and
if you don't have it, it doesn't actually have the same vibe.
and what we say now in the wine industry is you're not selling wine, you're selling an experience, at least for the small guys. Because if you're just selling wine as a commodity, you can't compete with the big guys. You can't get into Safeway. You can't get into 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
That's the biggest tragedy is in this state is that there's nowhere for people to buy our products. And you're only allowed 3 alcohol vendors at a farmer's market at any one time. So that's one brewery, one winery, and one kombucha guy, because that's defined as alcohol. So who can develop a business plan around that?
Yeah.
We used to do more farmers markets than anybody else in Washington when we could sell our brandy too.
Right.
And but if it's only one day a week and you're only allowed every third Sunday, who can make money off that, or who can get an employee that will work such an irregular schedule?
Right.
So that's been tough. But so the more help we can give our farmers markets, the better, and the more things that we can do to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I did want to just touch briefly there. You were talking about there's a Supreme Court ruling that just happened.
Can
you kind of give us a background on that and what?
Oh, well, that's now you're going back to my environmental law background.
Yeah.
But so this is a NEPA, National Environmental Policy, Environmental Impact Statement case from the U.S. Supreme Court. It came out literally 5 days ago. And so, the environmental review on any sort of development has kind of been how a project, whether it gets stopped or not. If the neighbors are really against something, they file a suit under NEPA or the state equivalent SEPA.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing that happened is finally, and it's of course been expected ever since the Supreme Court, went totally conservative, that they were going to rein in these environmental reviews under NEPA, and they did it. And so they announced it 5 days ago. The ruling came down. So finally, we've had limits placed on how much review is required. So if you're a developer, it's the greatest decision in years. Well. There was another one that got rid of the Chevron doctrine. That was an even bigger one. But let's not go there. But it's interesting. Washington is we just had our Supreme Court do the opposite, which was in the case of some wineries in King County that were trying to develop in the agricultural zone in King County. They got shut down, and an ordinance got struck down on SEPA grounds. And the Washington State Supreme Court kind of, if the current U.S. Supreme Court is being conservative, they're being more liberal. So they sent the review to, some would say, more extreme levels where more and more reviews required. Look at the alternatives. You got to look at not just the impacts of your project, but what's it going to look like 20 years from now when other people have developed, and it goes on and on and on. And I don't know what the right level of review is. It's somewhere between those two extremes. And so that there is that fight being had in the courts right now.
Yeah, but I think what's kind of disturbing is there's a perception, certainly in Seattle, that people support they support the local farms, and the state and the county support the local farms, but it seems like they're actually, especially the smaller farms, they're having a difficult time.
Yeah, I think the one that's been the most shocking to me is global GAP, good agricultural practices. It just sounds so good.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't want spinach to get E. coli and somebody to get sick.
Right.
Well, what's happened though is you have to comply with global GAP to sell your products anywhere now, and it's just not economically viable for a tiny little farm like mine to get approved. Right. And just the level of paperwork I already do to be organic and biodynamic. Then you got to throw on that, and it's an example of it's very well intentioned, but then you end up that a successful farm has to be large enough that it can afford to have at least one full-time person that does nothing but regulatory compliance. Well, and that's a 1,000-acre or a 10,000-acre farm.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you, because Wilridge is the first certified biodynamic, but I think that I had a brief little insight as to how difficult it was to get certified. And if you weren't actually an attorney yourself, would anyone else have been able to get through that kind of a certification process?
Oh, people can do it. It's
Yeah.
just is it worth it? For all the money it costs and the time.
Right.
I mean, the fun of biodynamics is out there on the farm.
Right.
The certification is like getting your taxes audited. I mean, that's about the inspections and all that and all the paperwork.
Yeah.
It does take some of the fun out of it. Now, with that said, there are some great programs under the Biden administration that started to give support. You can get some of your certification costs back.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there's a transition to organic partnership program that I participate in, helping other farmers get
Awesome.
certified. So we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
Is this funding going to last? Who knows?
But it seems like that was my question, is if you're farming, especially the big push to sustainability and organics is now actually a valuable proposition, right? People actually are interested in buying more organic and sustainable products. But how do you make that transition? And who is there to help you guide that process? Because that can't be inexpensive. It's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, there are some resources at USDA. I wasn't quite sure where you're going with that question, because the other controversial thing is now we have big corporate farms going organic.
Yeah.
And part of me says, well, yeah, don't you want Walmart selling organic food? And it's better than selling chemical food. But it does take some of the cachet of the small family farm where the plant actually sits in dirt, not in an aquarium.
Well, but the thing is that's I think that's where the biodynamic thing, I think, becomes valuable, because it's really, you can't really do that in a really big, it's a lot of soil development and stuff like that.
Biodynamics is, of course, the opposite.
Exactly.
Of that.
And that's why I think it's well, I don't know. I think it's not easy. Again, I was like, it's not easy to build these farms. It's quite a bit of time commitment.
Yeah, you've got to be in it for the passion, not the money.
Yeah.
And this idea of healing the earth through agriculture
Yeah.
is our goal. But it looks like we have to have some music on Friday nights, and some food offerings, and maybe some lodging to make it viable.
No, exactly. And the thing is, I mean, is it possible? Like, what are some of the conditions? Like, is it possible within a farm to give a cap for how many guests you can have, to negotiate that within the area?
Yeah, they do that, and you used to be able to very easily have 5 guest rooms in Yakima, but somehow that got changed, and that we're working on it right now. In fact, those numbers are being tossed around right now, and whether they're going to allow lodging at a small amount of lodging, and they've shown. That, like, for instance, Whitman College did a study about when the wineries arrived in Walla Walla, who the main beneficiaries were.
Oh, that's interesting.
And guess the wineries don't make the money; the hotels do.
Yeah, I did read that article.
Yes, people come to the winery. You're lucky they buy a case of wine for $300,
right?
And then they go spend another $300 a night at the local hotel.
But and I can tell you from someone who's been, I would much rather stay on the winery that I'm going to visit, because you're drinking, then you just go there. I'm having to, be far away from there when I'm actually coming specifically to visit the wineries. Yeah,
and it's the same. And that's another thing that the county commissioners in Yakima understand, is that you want people eating at a winery.
Yeah.
You don't want them out there on an empty stomach. And,
right.
And it's all about wine and food anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And what about this idea that because especially for a property like yours, putting the housing somewhere separate, farther from, I mean, you have so many different kinds of
Well, that's my point, is that I think if you're not removing ag land, if it's not land that could be used for agriculture, that's where you want to put it.
Exactly.
It's where the difficult issue is parking. It's hard to park people on a rock, and so then you do. Some farms, what they do is they'll have like a pasture or a hayfield that they can mow and then park cars there during the off season. Alternating like that. That's a no brainer that should be allowed. And then just finding places to put the cars.
What about remember Catalina Island? You can't bring a car on there. You just have little golf carts that drive around.
Hey, I would do all electric bicycles. That's what we do at our place.
Exactly. You could do that.
I don't even like
then...
seeing those ATVs that my neighbors all drive around.
But I mean, it's a way to sort of cart people if they have luggage or something that they want to go onto an area that's not on the main path.
Eventually, if this became viable and you had a dozen or 20 little farms like this, then you really could run a van up from a parking lot in town.
Yeah, exactly.
And take people around.
And then you really have this experience of being sort of off the beaten path, but you're really close to the wine.
We're actually looking at getting an electric van right now to bring customers up and take them around.
I think that's such a. I mean, I think it's kind of like I don't know if you remember downtown when they revitalized downtown, and then they made parking free. That whole place just like supercharged. It's like they find it's such a small thing, right?
Yeah.
People just hate paying for parking. It's like a psychological thing. Add the cost to the product. They don't even care, how you say it, but don't charge them parking.
I just found out that Amazon has free parking in downtown Seattle on the weekends.
Yes, it's so awesome.
I've been downtown 3 more times just because of that.
Well, and also during the weekday after 4. All their buildings. In fact, all South Lake Union, it's just an amazing thing. I know when I discovered it, I'm like, what?
Well, then talk about insurance. Then everybody else, the other parking garage people would be like, oh, well, somebody will get hurt in my parking garage at midnight and I'll be sued. Well, in Washington, we have recreational immunity. So, you think I would let people climb on the rocks on my property? Or not I would, but do you think my insurance company would?
Interesting.
Not a chance. But we actually, people don't realize that. So for so many years, no hunting signs and no trespassing signs were put up just because this theory that somebody could come trip on your property and sue you, which has always been a little exaggerated. Yeah. But that is precisely not the case in Washington State anymore. So
I wonder how
you should be able to you should welcome your neighbor bicyclist or jogger to run through your apple orchard. Why not?
Now we all know it's at our own risk. But that's there are all these legal implications that they always mess things up. Yeah.
Well, the insurance is another thing that's killing the family farms right now. Well, everybody's hurting, but these wildfires in California have got the insurance companies so spooked. Yeah. Our insurance was outrageously expensive, and it doubled this year.
Oh my God!
I am now paying more for insurance than for a full-time salaried employee.
But Yakima's not a wildfire region, is it?
Well, try to explain that to somebody from Philadelphia or London.
Oh my gosh! Seriously, they can just look at the data. I mean, that's so crazy. Oh my gosh.
Well, we have grass fires all the time. And they burn through in 15 minutes and then they're gone. They're not a great thing, but it's not, we're a distance from the big fires. But that whole the whole thing with insurance companies being scared from what they've seen happen in California wine country has made it difficult for us to get those specialty policies that we need.
Well, I think the other thing is that a lot of those they progressively increased their rates so high. A lot of those people, they went without insurance. They just dropped it because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, but then I really would have to close to the public.
So I did want to talk about. So right now you're involved with Yakima County and sort of helping them, or giving them feedback about.
Yeah, they set up an Agritourism advisory board, and so I'm one of the members of that.
Awesome.
And so,
that's awesome.
The fact that I had 22 years as an environmental lawyer, and specifically, did a lot of writing of statutes and regulations. I'm kind of doing a lot of pro bono work on it too, trying to get a really nice set of regulations that make sense.
Right.
And working with the staff there and the commissioners have been great. So that's what we're trying to do. Again, I'll believe it when I see it in writing and adopt it. And then,
well, that'll be another notch under your belt.
Well, then the fear is somebody will sue over those regulations that'll get tied up in court.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of regulatory litigation, I think. over land use, zoning land use, and maybe specifically towards Washington State resources, right? But
Oh, I think it's like we were talking earlier. It's in general. There's the not in my backyard, and there's the I already got my piece of paradise. I'm not letting you in factor, and then there's the general public wanting to get to access this resource, and it's inevitably going to create conflicts.
yeah,
So how do you balance that?
yeah,
I mean, it would be a sad thing if all the wineries in Washington State had to be in industrial parks, and
yes,
that is the vision of some folks. For me, I don't see anything that is there's nothing more agricultural than a winery
yeah,
on a
exactly,
vineyard,
exactly.
where you can literally walk the grapes into the processing.
What about the educational aspects of agritourism? Because that's the whole. I mean, one of the things is to bring. For someone like me, I lived in concrete my whole life. There was a period where if I stepped out of concrete, I became very anxious. And, I would never have the opportunity to visit a farm or to understand, what that life is like.
Yeah, and that's again an experience you're only going to get at a small farm, not at a big corporate ag farm.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's another thing that we're definitely emphasizing, and we need to educate a lot of people about biodynamics.
Yeah.
And you can't do that the best way to do that is if they come out and see it in action.
Yeah, exactly. And I would think that Wilridge is in a good position for that, to be an educational resource for that.
We want to do more and more of that.
Yeah.
We had Nick on the Rocks out
I'm
there.
excited about that.
And it was, we thought there might be 50 people and 300 people showed up. So that's the kind of stuff we love to do.
Yeah. I told you my friends from Italy who are big foodies. She said, he created his own AVA. That really blew her away.
Well, it's amazing the opportunity we have that we're here at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's there is actually land that I have planted that is virgin land. And there is a real, there's something almost spiritual about that. Is this going to now become agriculture? It was vacant shrub steppe.
Right.
And we're preserving this over here, but is this the highest and best use for this?
Right.
They haven't been able to do that for 1,000 years in France.
Wow.
To be able to plant and the fact that I can grow any grape I want.
Yeah.
If I'm in Burgundy, it's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Interesting.
That's why these French winemakers like to move here.
Well, that's probably why because they know something about that, which I don't, and that's probably why.
We haven't even found half the great places to grow grapes in Washington State yet.
Wow.
Washington State is half the size of Italy.
Oh my gosh.
So we could support another 2,000 wineries here if the conditions were right, if the state wanted to, if there were places to sell the products.
Right.
And we were going to find all these wonderful places. Water being the big limitation.
Yeah.
But that's we're going to manage that, and grapes use a lot less water than most agricultural products, so it's a good thing.
Well, Paul, again, it's always great to have you on the podcast. We learned so much, and we look forward to following you on this journey to build an agritourism on Wilridge.
Well, my ultimate goal is we had, speaking about education, for 2 years we had a University of Washington senior architecture class come out and do a charrette at the property, and for an entire semester, and use our property as an example. So I have designs for 20 gravity flow wineries from Wilridge, from 20 young wannabe architects.
Wow.
And the designs are all really interesting and made me see the property in so many different lights.
Yeah.
But one of them was truly brilliant. And I still want to do it. So if you're standing at our tasting room and you're looking out over Cowiche Canyon, that's where we want to have our gravity flow winery with a top floor, a tasting room with a giant deck, and then, of course, a plexiglass floor so you can watch the wine operations below, conference rooms for meetings and conferences and classes. And the bottom floor is barrels and bottling, and so the grapes come in the top, and it all flows downhill and out the bottle.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, the existing winery, which we have in that old apple warehouse that
Yeah.
we recycled,
Yeah.
that would become a distillery. That would all be brandy aging, and the winery would move over there as
my
part of our.
gosh.
That's the ultimate vision.
That sounds amazing.
We're just looking for some investors.
Well, no, let's keep in touch on that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. I think that but so we will keep in touch with you and
Great,
follow what's going to happen, especially Yakima. That's an exciting development.
Well, thanks for all you're doing on this, Charlene. So,
Yeah.
spreading the word is really important.